Welcome, everyone. What a great turnout. This is so exciting. Just wanted to introduce myself a little bit because I know many of you have been in this field for years, if not decades, and I am a little bit newer to the field. Became a credentialed veterinary um, technician in 2016 and went right into education. I have been committed to helping vet students, faculty, staff since day one, and I just love discovering this community. So I hope to get to know as many of you as possible, especially at the conference that is upcoming. So we have some amazing people that I'll introduce in just a moment. But today is going to be a little bit of a teaser for what to expect at the conference in Houston at the end of July. So if you're not registered and you're planning to come, get registered. We definitely want to see you there. With that said, I do work at Appalachian State. I'm the interim assistant director of our program. And near and dear to my heart, I'm also the well-being coordinator. So that is really more of my background as opposed to knowing or teaching the technical courses. And I just am grateful for the opportunity to moderate today on teaching excellence and innovation. We will have time at the end for the prizes that Todd mentioned, and also time for questions from you all. But joining us on the panel today, we have Dr. Amy Staton from Morehead. We have Noah Meyers from Noah, I am completely blanking and don't have
That's
it right
okay.
in front of
Tidewater
me.
Community College.
Thank you, Tidewater. I was going to say TCC, but I wanted to
That
know
works too.
the acronym. And then we've got Tammy Schneider from Bel-Rea Institute, which is my alma mater, and so I am going to give them each a brief minute to introduce themselves because I think they'll do it better than I can. So let's start with Amy. Would you go ahead?
Sure. Again, my name is Amy Staton, and I am currently the Program Director, Associate Professor of the Morehead State University Veterinary Technology Program. I'm also a graduate of that program. I've been employed by MSU in the Vet Tech program since 2008. I started as a staff technician, went to an instructor level, and then assistant professor. And just this last year, I gained tenure. So now I'm an associate professor with Morehead State. Also serve on the Kentucky Board of Veterinary Examiners as well. I've been a member of that board since 2020. So I try to stay very active as far as the profession goes. If you follow any of the laws and regulations, Kentucky's been a big one to watch this year because of our Practice Act, and we're really pushing for that title protection for our credential technicians. So I'm very blessed and proud to be part of that as well.
Thanks so much, Amy. Noah, why don't you go ahead and then we'll wrap up with Tammy.
Sure. So, hello everyone. My name is Noah Meyers. I'm a licensed veterinary technician graduating from Blue Ridge Community College in 2018. So, I'm a fairly semi-recent graduate, but I am now the clinical skills instructor at Tidewater Community College's veterinary technology program in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I have the amazing privilege of working with some outstanding students and guiding them through hands-on and engaging laboratories to ensure their success in the field of veterinary medicine. Today, we are all here to discuss and share insights on teaching excellence and innovation in veterinary technology education. I have a large passion for pain management in veterinary care, and it drives me to continuously seek out new methods and technologies to enhance our students' learning experiences. At TCC here, we are pioneering immersive anesthesia simulations for our second year veterinary technology students. And that is a project that I am particularly proud of as kind of my child. But I've been working very hard on that for the past almost about a year and a half, 2 years. I'm really looking forward to sharing some and exchanging some ideas, learning from everybody, and both Dr. Staton and Tammy Schneider, and exploring ways how we can collectively elevate the standards of veterinary technician education. So I really appreciate everybody for being here tonight, joining us, and getting ready to dive deep into teaching innovation or teaching excellence and innovation.
Excellent. Thanks, Noah. Tammy, over to you and the cows.
Well, me and the cows, got to be there with, it's either that or goats, one of the two. So I'm Tammy Schneider. I graduated a really long time ago from vet tech school. I hate to say how long ago, but it was a long time ago. I worked in the field for quite a few years, and then I moved to go back to my alma mater and teach at Bel-Rea. I too, like Dr. Amy, very involved in our state and our Practice Act. I was on a committee with Rebecca where we lined out all those things to get that through our sunset review. And luckily we made it. We now have title protection here in Colorado, which is awesome. It was a lot of work, and I'm sure Dr. Amy would agree. It's sometimes overwhelming, right? I'm super excited to be here with everybody today and talk about different innovative things that we can all do. And I think I just want to throw out there is that even us old dogs can learn new tricks. Even when we've been doing it a long time, we can learn those new tricks too.
Love that. Thanks everyone for introducing yourselves. And so I do want to just share with everyone that each of these panelists comes from a different, I think a very different type of institution that they'll likely elaborate on, from private to state-run to, from 2-year to 4-year, and hybrid to all in person. And I think that hopefully, that will speak to the audience and membership that we have here today, because I know that we come from a lot of different places, but we're focused on that same core value of helping elevate our students in the vet as they become veterinary technicians. So I have the same kind of intro question for each one of you guys, or each one of you folks. And that is, what does teaching excellence and innovation look like for you? So Amy, could I ask you to go first? Would you be willing to, I know you're talking at the conference this summer, but would you be willing to share a sneak peek at some innovative ways that you've been working?
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to Tammy, I graduated many years ago, and I graduated from the program that I currently lead. And so it's interesting to see how education has evolved from the time I was a student. Students learn very differently now than what they learned back in the 1990s. And so for me, it's more of what works best for the students. Every year I tweak my courses and I say, oh, I've got it down. Next year's going to be a breeze. I'm just going to be able to sit back and lecture and conduct lab. And that is so not true. Every year, the students learn in a little bit different way. And so for me, top priority is the students. And it's very challenging at times, very time consuming, but it's worth it in the end. When these students come in, and I tell them on day one, you've got to have a passion for this profession. If you don't have a passion now, And I'm not talking about just, oh, I love puppies and kittens and, you know, the puppy breath. And you've got to love science. And if they don't have that passion when they come into the program, I'm a very black and white person, and blunt with them. So I automatically tell them, maybe you should look into a different career path, because if you're not passionate now, I guarantee you, you are not going to be passionate in 5 years. You're going to be burnt out, and you're probably going to be going back to school for something else at that point. And I think that is something that, you know, the honesty of it, the students really appreciate. But I still have my passion. You know, my flame is still burning. So when I go into that classroom, the students will tell me that they enjoy my classes because my passion overflows into them. I'm excited to teach them, and I'm excited for those moments, those light bulb moments when you're instructing them, and maybe half the class get what you're saying and the other half you're kind of like, okay, they're a little lost in the weeds. And so we'll kind of twist it around. You know, I very much throw in scenarios. I worked in a mixed animal practice 10 years before I moved over to academia. So I had a lot of experience on both large and animal side, large and small animal side. And so stories, bringing stories to the classroom, making it fun for the students. That's what they learn, or, you know, that's what they remember. I can talk to them all day long about a C-section, you know, what it is, how it's performed, how we're caring for those neonates. And I can, you know, I can read it off of a PowerPoint, and I can go verbatim from a book, and they're going to be sitting there falling asleep. But if I can throw in a story from my experience from practice, the excitement lights up in them, and you can see it. So I think the overflow of passion is something that is crucial for students. And then, you know, what all, and Rebecca, you may have to cut me off because I can talk.
I'll be that person for you,
okay,
Amy.
Thank you. And what are some new innovative ways that I can keep their attention and have them be interactive with me in class? No one wants to sit there for an hour and listen to someone point off from a PowerPoint. It's boring. So if there's, you know, if there's some Q&A portions, throw up a little pop quiz in the middle of the class. I am an elite fear-free professional. I am like over the moon with fear-free. I have taken what I've learned from being a fear-free professional with animals, and I have directly transitioned that into my classroom. I make my classroom a place where the students want to come. Mm-hmm. So, and every year I incorporate new things. This year, on test days or exam days, I have my diffusers out. I've got the chamomile and the lavender flowing. I've got, I give them candy. Positive reinforcement works on humans just like it does on animals as well. So before an exam, tell them to get up and, you know, shake all their nerves out. I give everybody a lollipop or a dum-dum so they've got something in their mouth, or a piece of hard candy. I'll play calming music for them. It's literally fear-free for students. And so what I would encourage each of you to do, if you are a fear-free professional or learning about it, is try to think of ways that, okay, we're doing this in animals. We know it works. How can I take what I know from a clinical standpoint of using fear-free on animals and how it is incorporated into my classroom? So some days I may take my class outside. We don't sit in a classroom all day. We'll go outside, absorb some of that vitamin D. and it can get pretty interesting. We play games, we'll go outside, and for my final exam review, if anybody's ever watched Ellen's Game of Games, I don't know that it's even on anymore, but the Dizzy Dash. So they would set these people down in a recliner, and then they would spin it around really, really fast for I don't know how many spins, and then they'd have to jump up and run and grab a ball to answer a question. So I was like, oh, we can totally do that. So I have a little stick. We get in groups of 3, 4, depending on how many students I have at a time. And 7 is the magic number for spins. So if you spin them 5 times, they're not dizzy enough. And if you go 10, you've got some people in the corner that are a little sick. So they'll spin around 7 times. And then I have a squeaker toy on the opposite side of the field. They run, take off running. Whoever grabs the squeaker toy first, I ask them a question. If they get it right, they get a point. At the end of the game, whatever team has the most points, they get a prize. So positive reinforcement, and who knew fear-free would work as well as it has, but it's done wonders for my students.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Amy. I'll cut you off there, although I think you're at a natural stopping point. The nuggets that I just took away, making your classroom fear-free. Like, I hope everyone is writing that down if you haven't already. The fact that, the importance of stories, sharing stories. I'll tell you, I still remember Tammy was one of my instructors at Bel-Rea, and her stories stuck with me the most out of any faculty member, especially the ones that involved OB gloves and reaching into cattle. You remember those. And I've actually had to do some of those since then on my own animals. So it just all comes full circle. But Amy, thank you for sharing fear-free stories, getting out the positive reinforcement. And it sounds like maybe some college games that I used to do drinking and really don't recommend. So I love that you're doing it without alcohol and for educational.
No alcohol, that is correct.
Educational purposes. Fantastic. Noah, you are up next with the same question.
Yeah, certainly. So what does teaching excellence and innovation mean to me? Well, like I had mentioned in my introduction, we've started doing immersive anesthesia simulations in our veterinary technology program. As some individuals in vet med will say, we're about 10 to 15 years behind human medicine when it comes to changing in the way we do things and the way we treat our patients. And, simple as fear-free, like Amy was saying, I experienced the same thing. I went in for a doctor visit for a medication administration one time, and they make the environment so peaceful. They play music, you're in a comfortable chair. I mean, we can't make all those accommodations for our students, but anything we can do to ease the anxieties that our students have. But for me, teaching excellence is the ability to effectively engage our students in what they're learning, to inspire a passion, whether they may already have that, or as Amy said, maybe they don't have that passion yet, or hopefully they're going to get it soon, for learning. Because I think that's what makes students so successful, is when they just have that passion for learning, they can usually achieve anything they want. They just need to have that passion. And then ensuring comprehensive understanding and retention of the material. So almost like an assessment of some kind. So we want to make sure we encompass all of these factors when it comes to teaching excellence, so we can provide excellent environments for our students to learn in. And ultimately, that varies from program to program depending upon how you're structured. But innovation in teaching, we feel like that incorporates new methods and tools and technologies to the learning experience. And I think that's where we're really shining here at TCC with our immersive anesthesia simulations. Is we've invested about $100,000 of equipment into equipment and materials and to mannequins. And so now we use a variety of mannequins and varying levels of fidelity, which I can certainly elaborate on further, to provide a perception of realism And I think when people start, I've been doing a lot of research lately because I do have a talk here at the AVTE coming up in Houston. It's going to be about veterinary education through immersive anesthesia simulations, a comprehensive approach. I'm lucky enough to be co-lecturing with Tara Groves, who's actually on here as well tonight. So thank you, Tara, for being here. But we are going to be really talking about how we put together immersive anesthesia simulations at TCC. What are the steps that we took to guide ourselves through building these simulations? Because there's so much information out there. When you start opening the book of research, of looking to see where are they doing simulations, they're doing it. And I think one thing that we always reference to, especially in our program, is that when we're doing skills like anesthesia or surgery, these are very complex skills. There's a lot of things that have to happen in a short period of time. And we know there are other professions, something, for example, like pilots, they have checklists, they have skill lists that they have to go through and make sure that they're doing appropriately. And so why aren't we doing these things in veterinary medicine to allow our students to learn easier? Why aren't we giving them the tools that they need to make it easier? Not give away the answer, but give them the tools to succeed, I think is so important. So trying to pull all these factors in and create engaging simulations where the students have to come in, they have to monitor a patient, they have to respond to feedback from the patient, they have to, evaluate, the patient is experiencing tachycardia. So what do we want to do that? Is this anticipated tachycardia from the anticholinergics that we use? Hopefully not for our pre-med. Or are we using, dissociative that's causing that increase in heart rate? Or are we truly experiencing pain? So let's check our reflexes. And so we go through checklists with them in a flow sheet of kind of the algorithm needed to treat and troubleshoot abnormalities under anesthesia. And so far, our students have been very positively impacted by this. They have shared positive experiences and positive feedback on their end on how much they love learning in this type of environment. I think the lecture-based learning of attending lectures and taking notes is kind of falling out of favor for a lot of students because, our classes are 3 hours twice a week. And although there are 10, 15-minute breaks in between hours, it is a long night. And so if we can do some type of flipped classroom where we incorporate hands-on skills, if they're learning about intubation, let's go ahead and talk about intubation for 30, 45 minutes. And then let's bring in one of our intubation models and walk them through it while they're watching us. Maybe even bring in a camera and bring in new technology where we can zoom in on the patient's head so that we can see what they're doing and what areas they're holding or not holding. So anyways, a lot goes into it, but it's something that I'm really passionate about and I love sharing. So I'm sure we'll get on to it a little bit more, but I will pass the mic back over to Rebecca.
Fantastic. Thank you, Noah. The nuggets I took away from you, or first of all, I want to come to your talk at AVTE's conference. The simulations, I definitely want to dig in more to that tonight and I'm guessing that a lot of people would like to hear a little bit more about how that works, maybe some specific examples. But I heard, engaging students similar to what Amy said. And I also heard assessment, which I think is super important in innovation, because it's not just that we're going out and doing whatever we want, but we're really looking at, what happens? How are the students responding to this?
Yes,
so Tammy, Tammy, I'd love to find out from you what teaching excellence and innovation looks like for you.
So I'm sure a lot of these concepts are very similar to Dr. Amy and also Noah, but I think a big part for me is realizing that we as instructors have to be lifelong learners and we have to set that example for our students. They should see us doing the same thing, right? And it's waking up every morning and saying to myself, what can I do to make this class better today? What am I going to do to change that? And on that same note, also being willing or being enough of a risk taker to fall flat on my face. And I think sometimes as instructors, that's a scary thing because we always want to look like we're doing everything perfectly. And having the permission to fail and also giving that permission to our students, I think sets up a situation where innovation then can happen, right? Because we're not so worried about failure that we're not willing to try new things. And then on that same note, after we do have something, we do try something new, being willing to take that constructive criticism from the students back to find those things. How could we make it better? It's collaborative. It's not just me as an instructor doing these things and they either do it or don't, and they either get something from it or not. It's working as a team to figure out, okay, what can we do to make this even better next time? And I think when we give them that ability, we hand that torch to them, they are much more willing to help us be better at what we do too. So we can help them be better and they can help us be better. So I think those are big things that I do a lot of and that falls into engagement, that falls into, because then they're engaged with me about whatever it is that we're doing at that given time.
Love that. Thank you, Tammy. My nuggets from that were us role modeling, being lifelong learners, and giving ourselves permission to fail and allowing students to do that as well. So we are entering our next round, which is more of the popcorn round. So we're going to have some shorter answers, and I don't have a buzzer in front of me, but maybe Todd can help. But I do want to. I will also encourage the audience, everyone who's here tonight. I want to make this feel informal and comfortable to, start asking some questions in the chat. We want to get to those. We will have a Q&A at the end, but in terms of some kind of shorter questions, Amy, I would love to hear a little bit more about some of the reactions that you've seen from your students. What have you noticed when you do things like take them outside or play? I think you mentioned playing games with them.
Yeah, so students, you get a large variety. You've got introverts and extroverts, and trying to create a classroom that works for both of those is extremely difficult. The first few weeks, it's kind of like pulling teeth sometimes. It's like you ask them questions and you hear crickets in the classroom. But just like Tammy was saying, it's a collaborative effort. Showing them respect. I mean, it blows my mind the backgrounds that some of these students come from. I didn't sign on to be a counselor, but I very much listen to their hardships, and giving them the opportunity to allow me to work with them as far as what works best for them. The introverts, it does take a little bit longer for them to come out of their shell. That's understandable. But this past semester in surgical nursing, we break down the anesthesia machine, and they learn every part of the anesthesia machine. They learn the different types of breathing circuits. And we have a little relay and I will time them, and we'll do it, repetitively every week in lab. I time them putting together a non-air breathing circuit, and I don't announce their time to the entire class. I just write it down. And so I let them see their time each week. And the amount of confidence those students get from that, because each week they get quicker and quicker. Well, by the end of the semester, some of them are putting non-breathers together in 10 to 15 seconds. And they started off with like 4 minutes, you know, at the beginning of the semester, you're like, oh gosh, it's going to be a long semester. But just allowing them and to make mistakes, like Tammy said, we're all human. We're all going to make mistakes. And to be able to have that constructive criticism, to work with them, talk with them. I ask them on a daily basis. I'll say, would you rather do this, or would you rather go on this way? Sometimes it's all about the mood. You know, if they've got multiple tests that week, everybody's not happy. They're Debbie Downers. And so we may approach the classroom a little bit differently one week than we do the other. But I always incorporate the students, and it's not, they still maintain that respect, and that respect goes both ways. I respect them as students, and they respect me as a professor. I'm not there to
love
be
it.
friend.
I'm putting the buzzer on. I love the idea of the relay. We do have a question in the chat, so panelists, I'm keeping you on your toes. Switching things up a little bit because we got a good one. Nicole, thank you for this. How do you approach a student who thinks an innovative idea is stupid? She says, we've been challenged before by students who feel they have not paid for tuition to hear about our experiences. And we have some students who hang on to those stories and remember them. So I'm wondering, Noah or Tammy, would you be interested in responding?
I would respond to this. So I've had that response before. And that's when I come back to them and say, well, how would you make it better then? What would you change to make this an experience that you enjoyed? And granted, there still might be those ones that you do everything possible to incorporate them into the learning experience, and they still might think it's stupid. I don't know if we can always avoid that, but I think one way to deter some of that is, and prefacing the whole thing by going, okay, we're going to do this together and we're going to figure out how to make this work really well. When we start out saying that we want their help with making it a good thing, I think they're a lot more willing than opposed to waiting till the end. And then they're like, man, I didn't like that. Right. So maybe even prefacing the whole thing by opening the door for them, and midstream during whatever we're doing, saying, okay, what else can we do to make this better? Maybe that might help.
Love it. The collaboration and putting the question back on them. I do have, Noah, I have a question in the chat for you. And I think this speaks to what the specific examples I was going to ask from you. Annie asks, what program or programs do you use for simulations? And do you have any tips or tricks?
Sure. So we use the iSimulate by Reality 360 software, which I can share more information. I'm going to be having, they're actually sponsoring our lecture at the AVTE, or one of the sponsors. So it's an iPad system that you can use 2 iPads. I know other people use the Stage 3 by WholeLogic, by Dr. Keegan, which is a great software. He's developed it, and I think there's even scenarios that go along with it. But we use the iSimulate just because of its versatility, as well as the Canine Diesel by TACMed Solutions. He's a pretty pricier model, but he's considered high fidelity, so you can integrate him. You can do chest compressions. He's got pulses, bilateral pulses, and respiratory rate. But tips and tricks, I think.
Pausing you there for a second. High fidelity. What does that mean in this context for those of us who don't know?
So there are varying levels of fidelity, and basically the definition of fidelity for me, I would say, is the perception or the perception of realism that you can get with a model. So, for example, depending upon if we're talking about a high fidelity patient or a model, or mannequin or simulation, that would mean a very lifelike simulation. If we're talking about low fidelity, we will be talking about maybe like a venipuncture trainer limbs that are just very simplistic, made with pipe tubing and latex and silicone skin. I think the biggest thing, and I'll ping off of Tammy and Amy as well, is that the collaborative effort that it's really important to put forth and to tell the students, like Tammy said at the very beginning, preface things with, hey guys, we are trying to do things better. We're trying to improve this course, trying to improve the experience for all students, because we know you guys learn in a diverse amount of ways. And so how can we make this better? So that's doing like post-lab surveys that we do a lot for our students. So every lab, we get a survey that gets sent out to the students and they have to complete it. It might even be worth points, so that they have to do it. Otherwise, they're going to get points deducted, you know, and so force them to do these surveys. And so, but fidelity is, like I said, basically the realism, to the required realism, to create a perception of reality. And so there can be low, medium, and high fidelity mannequins and models and simulations. And so I think it's really getting into the right mindset for the students and trying to trigger them and say, hey guys, I need you to just kind of play along with me. We're going to, even though this is a stuffed patient, we're going to practice and, you know, simulate that this is a live patient that we're working with. So we need to treat it with respect. We're not going to try to pull its tongue out or pull its fur or whatever the case is. You know, students try to do crazy things. So, but yeah, I'll end with that.
Great, thank you. I love the respect, another common theme, right? And so I'm getting thank yous in the chat. I see a lot of great questions in the chat. I do have one for Tammy, a question for Tammy, not from the chat, but and then it'll be time to open it up to all Q&A. Tammy, as you know, as a former student of yours, and this was, I guess, about 10 years ago now, you know, we were taught in a very traditional lecture-based, you know, I memorized more than I could ever imagine about micro and hemo, and learned a ton. But tell me a little bit, because I've seen you change your classes and you've shared with me over the last few years what you've changed. What led to this level of innovation?
So I think a big game changer for me was COVID. I'll be 100, like COVID was a life-changing thing for me on many, many levels. In that we were a traditional in-person lecture, have labs, but everything was right there. And I had to change the way I thought about everything. It then became, okay, now we're online and you've never done this before. So that in itself was crazy enough, right? But it made me think outside of the box. I had to figure out, how am I going to get students at home to be able to do a PCV with something that's not blood? Because do I want to take a chance of sending blood home with students, right? Little did I know Tabasco spins down just like a PCV, by the way. But it made me think differently about it. And I would say that has moved forward. And I think all of us as instructors or faculty members post-COVID, our students are different too. And what worked pre-COVID totally worked, right? What works now is not the same. And I think we've all had to find innovative ways to still teach that same content, and still, granted, you still have to know strep equi causes strangles. That stuff is still there. But how can we teach that in a way where those students are not just memorizing? Is there a method that we can utilize to make it better? I've started doing a lot of flipped classrooms just because of that. Watch the lecture outside of class. When we get to class, let's use it. Let's apply it. Let's critically think about it. So I think for me personally, COVID was a big part of that. And I'm sure there's others out there that have experienced, especially for those of us that weren't so technologically savvy like Noah is.
I am guessing that we have a range. Thanks so much for sharing that. I would love, we do have quite a few questions. One of, I am going to ask for Todd's help if he doesn't mind, to ensure that I don't miss questions. So Todd, are there any that follow on what we've been talking about that makes sense to ask next?
Oh Lord, that's no pressure. Thanks.
Keeping you on your feet.
What I get. Did we get forgive me for a second, I was checking some other channels just to make sure. Did we get on to the concept of improving retention and engagement?
Not yet, no.
Well, then here's a question, because it's at least a launching point. Would love to hear some insights that you all have about improving retention and engagement in courses that are online and sometimes content heavy. And let's be honest, we're talking about anatomy and physiology, at least for starters.
Who would like to take that one?
I'll just quickly put a little tidbit in there of what I've incorporated since COVID. Is I now record all of my lectures. And so see as normal, but it's all recorded. That way the students can go back and listen time and time again, and they can refresh, making sure that they're not forgetting something or they didn't take a note on a particular portion. I also encourage them to do handwritten notes. You know, everybody wants to type everything out. Research shows that if we handwrite those notes, you're going to retain the information a lot better than what you would with technology alone. So those are two things that I have thrown in there since COVID, and the students that follow that, at the end of every semester, they'll say thank you for just something that simple is just telling them try handwritten notes rather than typing them out.
I think that's a great one.
For us older ones, maybe, yeah, it may be, you know, natural for our older technicians to handwrite everything, but the younger generation they want to do everything digital. And so I think pulling in some of those traditional study habits is extremely helpful for these guys.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I've got an interesting next one from Jarrett to ask part two of this question, which says, I've also run into students saying they feel like guinea pigs when a new idea doesn't go exactly as planned. How could you set their expectations beforehand to prevent this perspective? Who wants to take a shot at that?
I'll give it a shot. Because I kind of went down that path to begin with. You know, I always tell them that from day one, learning is a group activity in my class. We're all going to push each other to be better. We're all going to help each other become better. And in doing that, that means sometimes we're not always going to succeed first time. And it's okay to not succeed the first time. And I think when especially when you reverse that and say, you're not always going to succeed the first time, every time you try something. That means that even in education, sometimes it doesn't always go perfect. And we all know that just because of the diversity of our students. What worked last semester ain't going to work this semester with this group that I have right now. And letting those students know that every class and how the students learn is different. So we will modify as we go. I think letting them know that modification is okay and it's not a big tragedy to do it, I think they're a lot more willing to accept it too. I hope that answered it.
And what I found is that when they see us put forth that much effort, they're much more appreciative and willing to work with us on it.
Yeah, and if I can piggyback off what Tammy and Amy both said, is that was a big worry for me when I was doing the simulations, is that I'm putting so much time and energy, I'm putting a lot of money and effort into these simulations and redesigning a whole room and getting camera equipment and getting high fidelity models and software. And it's kind of, it scares me to think that, was this going to be a big flop? But I think, in everything, in the way we word things to the students and the way we prepare them. So having like a pre-briefing at the beginning of your lab and saying, hey guys, this is a new idea. This is the way I'm basing this off of what is researched in human medicine or human education or in veterinary education, because there are studies out there. And so this is founded in science, and there's a reason to the madness. And we're not just coming up with a crazy idea and then wanting them to play with a stuffed animal in a room. Like there's a rhyme to the reason, a reason to the rhymes. And so I think I would just wanted to piggyback off of what they said and share that piece of information.
That's great. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, panel. I'm trying to say guys less. So one of the things that was asked, and I see some great comments in the chat. So attendees, please check out the chat for some other good ideas and responses. There's a question in the chat about, have you tried using AI to generate activities? If you don't mind, I'd love to respond to this. I know I'm not a panelist, but I have, I teach communication skills in veterinary medicine. And so I've used AI to generate role plays, and am looking further into AI as a way for students to practice communications with clients, with phone calls. I think there's a lot that we can do. But let me pass that question along to our panelists, if any of them would like to.
I personally have not used anything like Chat GPT yet. Mm-hmm. It's on my radar of being something that I am going to try. I just haven't quite got there yet, personally.
How about
and
Noah?
I want to say the exact
Amy?
same thing as Tammy.
I have had experience with Chat GPT. I have used it to, as some people were saying in the comment section, rewrite questions or some rationales. Obviously, it's encouraged to review everything thoroughly before you just edit it and then post it, because it could be very wrong. I know I've had it try to answer some math questions, some CRI questions, and it did not go well. So I wouldn't use those for live patient calculations, but grading rubrics like Tara just mentioned, it is very helpful for generating just like learning objectives or outcomes. You can just throw in there as much information. The more detail you give it, the more information it'll be specific with. It can research web pages. It can research, white papers. As long as you can drop the document into the Chat GPT, it'll review it and create whatever you need to do. So it's pretty cool. But I've considered trying to utilize Chat GPT or an artificial intelligence to assist students with troubleshooting anesthesia. But I think there are so many possibilities that could go wrong under anesthesia. So for example, hypotension, the most common abnormality that we deal with under anesthesia. How do we respond to that? I know a lot of our hospitals in our area where our students are at, they would all say maybe 5 different treatments for hypotension, when really you need to assess anesthetic depth, and if the patient's already at an appropriate plane, are they truly hypovolemic before we just start bolusing a ton of fluids into them. So I think utilizing AI for potentially troubleshooting, as long as you gave it a reference guide, so kind of a starting point that's a verified document, so that it could then, you could say, okay, my patient is experiencing hypotension. These are the vital signs. What should I do? And that I think is probably a way of the future, that our monitors are probably going to become artificially intelligent and be able to respond to just like our monitors do sometimes now, although they're not very accurate. The more and the repetition that it is exposed to, I think the more it'll learn.
Okay, thank you so much. Any follow-up comments by our panelists? it
No,
is.
but I think there are some
Mhm.
interesting things going on about how people are using it beyond that in the chat too that you might want to check
Mm.
out. And I do know from a guy who has taught in the business school for 15 years. These days we pause and talk with our students about, how does this fit in? And challenge them to start thinking about the ethics and the usage and whatnot so that they don't, it's a shared guided conversation because the reality is they're using it in ways we think and there's way they're off using it in ways we wish they didn't. So how do we kind of bring it back together is kind of a key thing to do. But I think, Rebecca, you're about to say you have about 3 minutes to close it up before I need to start giving away a lot of things.
That is exactly what I was going to say. I can't believe how well you read my mind, Todd. And thank you for everyone sharing in the chat. I love the multimedia. So we do just have a couple of minutes, and I want to take a moment to thank our panelists from just the bottom of my heart. It's a pleasure to hear the things that you're doing. I can't wait to see you in Houston. And Amy, Noah, Tammy, you all keep up the amazing work. And I hope that the participants will also follow up with you and track you down at the conference to ask follow-up questions. So thank you so much for being of service for our community today.
Friends, look, we like to have fun. It's about being a community. It's about sharing ideas. It's about picking up on innovation. And if you haven't picked up, we started a bit with leadership. And, there's 3 pillars to the fellows program. So there's no secret we're talking about innovation today. Leadership, mentorship, and innovation. And that's what we're talking about all the time. Really hope to see you in Houston. Hope to see you on the next chat. All these good things. Tammy, Noah, Amy, and yeah, even Rebecca, thank you. Very much appreciate you all. And more to come. We'll get this tape up and out for everybody as fast as we can too. Hope you have a wonderful night.
Perfect. See you guys in Houston.
See everybody
Take
in
care.
Houston.